The Frumkes Center for Writing and Culture at Hunter College presents 10 years of best-selling authors and great thinkers. Each week we broadcast new videos from our 10-year speaker archive online for free at our website. We look forward to seeing you again when it's safe. Please enjoy this presentation from the archives of the Frumkes Center for Writing and Culture at Hunter College.
I want to welcome you here tonight on behalf of the Writing Center CE. I'm already beginning to recognize some of you from the past. On the 24th, Susan Isaacs will be coming as part of our best-selling author series. And on May 3rd, Lisa Randall will be coming as part of the Great Thinkers series. And finally, on May 21st, I believe, Stuart Woods will be coming. And these will finish our two speaking series for the spring. Then on June 9th, you'll probably find the brochure for the Writers' Conference, which is also a very, very special event for us. And Seth, you're going to have to forgive me. Despite we have a long list of people on our list who said they were coming, but they're not here, and I think it's unfair to hold other people up. So if they trickle in, they trickle in. So I'm going to introduce you, and then we can get started. Mixed precocious talents in mathematics and philosophy with dashes of imagination, bravado, and humor. And what do you get? You've probably already guessed. Probably Seth Lloyd. Seth was awarded a doctorate from Rockefeller University while studying on a Marshall Scholarship under the renowned Heinz Pagels, and subsequently became a postdoc fellow in the high-energy physics department of Caltech, who worked with Murray Gell-Mann on applications of information to quantum mechanical systems. Trained thusly, he joined the faculty of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at MIT in 1994, where his research interests were in the area of the interplay of information with complex systems, especially quantum systems, and where he has performed seminal work in the fields of quantum computation and quantum communication. In fact, he proposed the first technologically feasible design for a quantum computer and refers to himself as a quantum mechanic. Seth has also published a fascinating book entitled Programming the Universe, which he will be happy to inscribe for you after the talk, which suggests that the universe itself may be one big quantum computer producing what we see around us and ourselves as it runs a cosmic program. Providing computational power continues to increase according to Moore's law. We could have a whole universe simulated in a computer in 600 years, says Seth. In any event, Seth is currently principal investigator at the MIT Research Laboratory of Electronics and directs the Keck Center for Extreme Quantum Information Theory. It is my pleasure to welcome Seth Lloyd to Hunter College as part of the Writing Center's Great Thinker series, and he traveled down from MIT today just for this talk, so I'm especially grateful. Seth?
Thank you very much.
And I should just mention that after Seth's talk, we'll open it up to Q&A, and then after the Q&A, you can continue with the refreshments, and his books are back there. And if you haven't read Programming the Universe, it's well worth reading, and he'll be happy to inscribe it to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Pleasure. So I'm probably going to scribble on this this board here because it's sort of a nervous tick, really, but I'll draw pictures as I go along, so if you want to see them, if you feel like moving up, you can. Heck with those people who aren't here. They don't deserve it. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I've known Louis for quite a long time now. I think you had me over at Marymount Manhattan 12 years ago or something like that. And it's intimidating to be described as to be part of a great thinkers series. I'm not going to try to give you great thoughts here, but I will try to tell you a thing or two about my perspective on the way the universe is put together and why it is the way it is. And I'll start with stuff that's in my book, and then I will also go on to more contemporary issues. This happens to be the 100th anniversary of the birth of Alan Turing, who was one of the inventors of the digital computer. And so at some point I'd like to talk maybe about the question of free will, which was the reason that Turing actually got interested in working on computation. And he wondered whether free will was a property just of human beings. So I'll try to answer the question about whether your iPhone has free will. Of course, it behaves as if it has free will in the sense that it like tries to mess with your brain all the time. Okay, so it's not a secret that the universe, that the human society right now is going through an information processing revolution. So let me actually this is my picture of a computer. I grew up I was in high school in the 70s, and when I was in the 70s, computers looked kind of like this, right? And they had like lights on the front and tape drives on them and pieces of paper tape coming out of them like that, right? And you had to program them by actually putting individual switches up and down. It was actually quite a great thing. And now, of course, computers are fancier looking. Indeed, your smartphone is far more powerful computer than any supercomputer that existed in 1978. Right. So, and we also have. So now let's have here we can have our iPhone. It communicates with our computer. We have the internet. Here we can draw a picture of, let's see, some fiber optic cable coming in. The whole world is wired together, and the information processing power of individual computers is gradually approaching that, at least the size of the brain of an ant, rather maybe not that of human beings yet. Well, hey, soon to happen. So, this is an amazing thing, this information processing revolution, and it really affects our lives to a large degree. I'm not sure if it's good or bad, really. I mean, one of the primary effects by the way, can people hear me if I just talk without the microphone? Is that okay? I'm known to be a loud person.
That's good.
All right. So, indeed, I think one of the funny, not so great features of this information processing revolution is it's completely changed the way that human beings deal with information. Information is incredibly accessible, which is great. If you want to find some spurious information, you can just look something up on Wikipedia, right? And then you may get something good or you may not. But of course, then also you're getting spam all the time, and now spam text messages. It's like the first time I got a text message saying that somebody loved me, I was happy, but then I realized that it was just an advertisement for pornography. So Japanese pornography, no less. I have no idea how we got there. It was a funny thing happened, somewhere in the last maybe 10, 12 years ago, I'd say, around 2000. I think that human beings made an incredible transition from the previous million years, or however back you date humanity, right? It's not a cutoff there. In fact, some parts of the world they haven't really attained it yet. But and I include my undergraduates among this. So I'm sorry.
Watch it, buddy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. We were undergraduates together. That's why I see that. Here's a prime example of what I'm talking about. So for most of human existence, information was something that was very difficult to come by. And people would go, weeks or months on journeys to go find people to study with, to get information, and to actually learn something that was written in a book. You had to go find the book, and there weren't any books, and it was hard to find out. And so it was a very hard thing to get good information. So most of people's lives, most of the lives of the human race, we've been hunter-gatherers of information. It's a rare resource, difficult to find. We go around and we look for it, and when we find it, we're so happy. But somehow, about 12 or 15 years ago, we went from being hunter-gatherers to basically being kind of filter feeders. There's all this information coming at us, and the point is to bat it away and try to get the stuff that you don't want, to get that out of your inbox so that people can't bother you with it. I mean, it's kind of strange. It's sort of sad. I mean, one thinks of the hunter-gatherer, both men and women, as kind of noble creatures, but now we're more like oysters. It's we're trying to filter the few bits that we really need out of the gajillions of bits that we don't need at all. It's a sad thing, actually. I didn't really realize this when I wrote my book, which is now 7 years ago, but I think it's not the best thing in the whole world. Okay, but look, this information processing revolution that we're in right now, which is based on electronic computation, silicon technology, fiber optic cables with photonic communications, optical switches, etc. It's an awesome thing, but let's face it, this is not the first information processing revolution that people have been through, because that we had over the past thousands of years, we've had. Let me draw it like this. So, you could say that the invention of the printing press. Let me try to draw a book right here. The invention of the printing press was quite a remarkable information processing revolution. And that actually made, sorry, this is a Christian kind of thing, but I think in the beginning was the word as a reasonable thing to write down here. But this was a remarkable thing, that people were able to actually print books, and books became very widely available. The rate of literacy went up from being 0.1% to 10% or 15% or 20%, and had a huge effect on human society, because actually having a literate society makes a large difference in terms of what people can do technologically, how laws get made, etc. And I personally feel that the electronic information processing revolution has a ways to go before it has as strong an influence on humankind as the invention of the printing press. Who here shares that opinion? Who here thinks who says the electronic revolution has had more effect? All right, I see some people. That's what I want. Okay, who thinks that the electronic revolution has not yet caught up, and that the printed word has still had a larger effect on human society over the last 500 years? All right, that's what I see. That's what I like to see. Okay, sorry, you guys are outvoted. Go tweet it to somebody, But of course, the printed word.
Sorry, Seth.
Now, if this were Japan, he would have to go outside, and he would never come back because he would have committed ritual suicide right out the door because his cell phone went off in public. Very bad. Okay. But of course, the invention of the written word is really nothing. Sorry, the invention of the printed word is nothing when you compare it with the invention. I'm trying to draw a picture of here a scroll in the invention of the written word at all. So here is the original version of that phrase, and arche in logos. I don't remember where the accent is on logos. And the beginning was the word, the original beginning of the Gospel according to Matthew. And so the invention of the written word is actually an incredible information processing revolution, which had a huge effect on human beings. It allowed poetry, it allowed books, it allowed, of course, but if you actually go back to the original writing in cuneiform, wedge-shaped marks on little pieces of rock and clay, There are not so many love poems. Do people know what the vast majority of cuneiform scripts are?
Diplomacy was used for. I mean, there were a lot of letters found that were.
There are letters, right?
Business records.
Business, right? Yeah, it was like basically like taxes, right? It was very appropriate for this time of year. It was records that were being collected in centralized locations, so people gave you that 1 out of 10 sheep. I'm sorry, what were you going to say? Accounting, yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, this is a very literate audience. I better be careful. I was going to say a whole bunch of lies, but now I see that people actually know a lot about what's going on. Yeah, so the written word was, and that actually kind of shows you that one of the main effects of having the written word is that it actually allowed centralized societies to form, where you could actually tax people on the basis of what they had written down and have business records. Though I have to note that on National Public Radio the other day, I did hear a translation of what might be the world's oldest love poem written in cuneiform, and it was really quite beautiful, and there was no accounting for it. Yeah. So okay. So even you doubters there who believe that the electronic information processing revolution has had a larger effect than the printing press, which, yeah, I think that's not so unreasonable. And in fact, I would say that probably reasonably soon most people will start to agree that it's had as much an effect as a printing press. I think, the spoken word, it's hard to claim that the electronic information processing revolution has had a greater effect than the spoken word. But would you say that? No. Probably not. He's not raising his hand yet. Oh, sorry, you raising your hand? He's still raising his hand. Okay, well, we'll keep on going till we. Sorry, you want to ask a question or you want to make a comment?
The spoken word defines our humanity.
Right. Absolutely. So, in fact, if you look at the spoken word, let me draw some people speaking. This is not so good. Make them happier. And here's an ear. The spoken word. Sorry. I had to do it fast, right? Yeah, the spoken word, as you say, it really in some sense defines humanity in the sense that human language, as we know it, seems to be a quite unique thing. It's not, there are animals that have quite complicated systems of communication, but it's not clear that they actually possess this kind of open-ended language that has this ability, for instance, to make arbitrarily complicated sentences that just go on and on and on, like the one that I'm uttering right now, and I'll keep on and on. Sorry. So the human language has this feature where all human languages have essentially the same things that you can say, though you can say some things more directly and perhaps better in French than you can in English. But yes.
But chimpanzee can learn. Read some words.
Many words.
They can speak.
Yeah.
But they can use our devices, digital devices.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that they can play video games. But I don't know regard the ability to play video games as actually being a sign of humanity.
Yeah.
But what they don't seem to possess, okay, so since you forced me to be slightly more technical about this, is they don't possess what's called the ability for recursion, which involves both capacity of self-reference and the ability to extrapolate from what you've done before. So for instance, if you try to teach chimpanzees, as many people have, to do arithmetic, you can indeed get chimpanzees to be able to add 2 and 2 and make 4 and do it again and again. But they are not capable of extrapolating from the ability to add 2 and 2 to the ability to add 3 and 3. Or even worse, if once you get beyond the number of digits of your fingers. So they don't possess what's technically called, they don't appear to possess what's technically called this general recursive ability in language. Ironically, the only other entities out there that possess this particular kind of ability, which comes from capacity of self-reference, ability to do certain simple logical operations and to extrapolate them, the only other entities that are out there that we know have this ability are actually your iPhone. Computers, the iPhone, because in fact computer languages have this property of recursion, and we gifted it, we gave it to them. Because that's the part of our human languages which computers can understand. They can't necessarily understand what we say when we say I love you, as many of my MIT undergraduates say to their computers frequently, right? So it's not clear that they have emotions. It's not clear that they have self-consciousness or consciousness of any sort. It's not clear that they have, for instance, free will, though we can talk about that in a bit. But they definitely have the capacity for fully recursive language, because that's just what computer languages do.
We can extrapolate many times wrongly. For example, global warming maybe, because Russian scientists say that this global coding is coming.
Yes, we can extrapolate wrongly. Yes, absolutely. In fact, I find that people who extrapolate correctly all the time are very annoying, and the ability to be mistakes and be uncertain is very important. Actually, interesting, I was having a conversation with a professor from Harvard Medical School yesterday who studies placebos, and he says that placebos, if you're certain that the placebo will work, then it doesn't work anywhere near as well as if there's a bit of doubt. So when they use the placebo effect to try to cure people, they try to instill, say, well, we're quite sure this is going to work, but it might not, so we're not sure. So somehow having that bit of doubt actually makes it work better. Don't ask me why. Okay, so the spoken word. It makes us human. It's an amazing and remarkable thing. The capacity for human language is a remarkable thing. It has all kinds of features. We do not know if other animals have it. But it probably, one thing that the other animals, if they do have it, that they're using to say is, God damn those human beings. They're using their capacity for language and organization to waste the rest of us, right? So, now, however, if you keep on going back in time.
On molecular level, but this works
sorry.
in psychology.
This is an argument we should have afterwards about a sub-piece of this talk, because I would actually like to move onward a bit now, if that's okay. So if you actually, so we say, okay, look, this invention of human language, insofar as it was an invention, who knows how it happened, the parts of the brain, of the cortex that are involved with language are very close to the parts that are involved with gesture. Noam Chomsky, I gave a talk at a group that I'm part of, and he claimed that he believed that gesture came first. So the ability for recursive thought and language came with gesture prior to the ability to speak, because it actually takes many generations to evolve the soft tissues in the throat and the palate in order to be able to make articulated sounds. So we don't know how it happened, but it did, okay? But you think of information processing revolutions, if you go even further, you go back and you find information processing revolutions like the existence of, I don't know how to draw this very well, this is my rendition of a brain, right? With nerves going down here, a central nervous system with a brain that allows you to process information in a neural fashion and then control operations and regulate a complicated body. Well, that's pretty cool information processing revolution. Or if you go back even further, the heck with brains, I mean, if you actually just say, let's see, sorry, how do I do this right here? I'm not trying this very well. So I'm trying to draw double strands of DNA. The discovery by, however it happened, of using coding, of different proteins of the genetic code is an amazing information processing revolution. One of the remarkable features about the genetic code is that if you actually look at how information gets coded in the genetic code. The genetic code is in your DNA, and it's a set of encodes to say express certain proteins at particular times in the, for instance, in the course of development of the organism when it's being put together in the first place. This code has all kinds of features that human beings only discovered for coding in the last 50 years or so. It's efficient, it's got different stop codes, it's self-delimiting, it's got all these fun things that coding theorists look at and say, oh yeah, you got to do that, right? So an example that I'm working on right now, because this is very close to the work that I myself do building quantum computers, is that if you actually look at photosynthesis, here's the sun, it's kind of a black sun because I have only one color marker, right? Photosynthesis, light comes in, and it hits a chromophore, which is like a little chlorophyll molecule, and it creates energy in terms of electron hole pair. And then you have all these other chromophores around, and this energy moves around and it gets to a place called the reaction center, where it can be turned into chemical energy. And it turns out that nature in constructing these systems has actually used quantum codes, the kind that we use for our quantum computers. Because in fact, this energy, as it's going through this system, is not going in one place. It's actually going through all these different paths at the same time, and quantum interference is making it efficient. So, I mean, fortunately, these bacteria who've been around for a billion years, they neglected to publish, so we were still able to get credit for this work when we discovered it a few years ago. Right? So you go back and you find, wow, you know, life itself, that's an unbelievable information processing revolution, and I actually rather doubt that the electronic information processing revolution will ever really have more impact than the development of life itself. And you can say, is that it? Is that the mother of all information processing revolutions? You know, well, it's a pretty big one, okay? And I would actually claim no, because in fact, as I'll now try to argue, and then Louis doesn't want me to go on for too long, but I'll just argue briefly, and then tell you a little bit about my work. I'll argue that in fact, the Big Bang was, this is my rendition of the Big Bang. Looks good. So the Big Bang itself was in fact an information processing revolution of the first magnitude. It was the original one because, you know, it was the first thing that happened as far as we know. Well, there might be some stuff before, we don't know what it is. But the Big Bang, I'm going to argue, was actually not just a big bang, it was a bit bang, because the Big Bang itself is not merely about the creation of a whole bunch of energy from nothing, though it is of course that, as in Alan Guth's phrase, the universe is the ultimate free lunch. It's also about information. Information that informs that energy to have it take on a certain form. And it's this fundamental physical level of how information processing works that's the basis of my own work. And in fact, I came to this realization by trying to build quantum computers where you store bits of information on individual atoms and elementary particles. And in the process of figuring out, well, how the heck do we take atoms and store bits of information on them, make them interact and flip those bits of information, build computers that compute in ways that ordinary computers can't, I came to the realization that basically this, essentially every time you have, you know, two elementary particles that are coming together, like an electron coming in here, here's a positron, let's say, coming in here, every time they bounce off of each other or interact, then they're processing information. In fact, every electron, every photon, every elementary particle carries with it bits of information. So an electron, for instance, has spin. It could be spinning like that or spinning like that. That's a bit of information. All right. A photon can be polarized like this or polarized like that. Indeed, if you have polarizing sunglasses, you can demonstrate this quite nicely by showing that, you know, oh, it's polarized like this, and then you can't pass through a polarizer like that. So, but anytime you have two elementary particles that interact with each other, their bits are flipped and transformed. In fact, the fundamental interaction between a particle of light, a photon, and an electron necessarily flips the bit of the electron. Photon comes in, it gets absorbed, it flips the bit. So information is at the most fundamental level in our universe. Everything at the most fundamental level, all elementary particles, all quantum fields, all superstrings, if you believe in superstring theory, they all register information, and via their interactions they process it. Okay, and that's the feature of the universe that we use when we build quantum computers, because all we're really doing is taking things like electrons and photons and atoms and taking the fact that they store information on them and process it in a natural fashion, and then just kind of manipulating it a little bit. You know, basically we're kind of like hacking into the ongoing computation that is the universe in order to make it process information in slightly different ways. I had my cousin is a cultural anthropologist, and she got married a few years ago, and I was seated at the wedding And she put me at a table with all these cultural anthropologists, and including Barbara Ehrenreich, who is a really delightful person who actually has a degree in chemistry, as it turns out. And Barbara Ehrenreich asked me what I did, and I began being a professor of mechanical engineering, quantum mechanical engineering at MIT. I started to say, well, you know, I and my colleagues, we take atoms and we exploit their natural information processing ability to make them compute. And I looked around and I realized that all the cultural anthropologists at the table were looking at me with this like horror on their face, like, oh, that is so politically incorrect. Like, you know, you're this colonizing atoms, you're exploiting atoms. This is terrible. So I had to like step back and retell this again in a slightly milder form. And after as the dinner was breaking up, Barbara Ehrenreich's partner was an older African-American activist from Greensboro, put his arm around my shoulder and said, Seth, the next time you describe what you do, I suggest that you say that you empower atoms to compute. It was a beautiful moment in my life because I went instantaneous like that from being an exploiter of atoms to an empowerer of atoms.
What is quantum mechanical engineering?
Yeah, so this is in fact, this is how do we empower atoms to compute. Quantum mechanical engineering is the branch of engineering we use to empower atoms to compute. So, so maybe actually, but this is a good time to actually ask people if they want to. This is a good. Let's see what people would like to talk about. How about that? So I can tell you how we build quantum computers, how we empower atoms to compute, maybe help you empower your own atoms to compute. That would be fun. We can also discuss kind of more of these implications of the fact that the universe is effectively a giant computer processing information at the most microscopic scales in an intrinsically quantum mechanical way, what kind of implications that has both for understanding what's going on in the universe and what might happen in the future. We can talk about why your iPhone has free will. Whatever you want. What do you, Louis?
What I was going to suggest is, I don't know the composition of the audience, but not everyone may be aware of what a quantum computer can do, that it may be an effectively built one, could be 1,000,000 times more powerful than the computers we have. What are the ramifications, ultimately, of having that kind of computer? Are the government, are they covetous? Do they keep you under wraps? Do the Soviets have their own? And then your own work.
Apparently not very effectively.
And then the programming of the universe. Is it an ultimate computer? I think are two avenues to go if you'd be willing.
Okay, or how about, but that's, you're cheating because you're the organizer. Do other people want to hear about that kind of stuff? Okay, all right, good. Sorry.
I'd like to hear you concentrate on the second question.
On the iPhone, why are...
Not free will, what the universe is computing.
Oh, okay, good. Well, actually, it's in fact related to the question about free will. So good. I think that fits. So is everybody happy with this plan for the moment? Okay, good. I see. Yes, as a professor of mechanical engineering, I need feedback, right? So without feedback, I just go crazy. I would tell you about anything I feel like, right? So yes, another question.
Yeah, and I'd like you to clarify that no matter how much work you do in physics, you're only dealing with how things work. You never touch the why question.
Oh, sorry.
I think that should be clarified.
Are you saying me personally?
Well,
actually, I was planning to address why kinds of questions as well as how.
Great.
Yeah. So in fact, I think this is a little unfair to physics and science because it's true that science, ever since the 17th century, has made progress by addressing how questions and how do you measure stuff. But somehow these things have a way of turning into why questions, right? So, and the notion of energy, what is energy? Well, people started saying, oh, we can convert it from one form to another. We can, make engines from it. And as you find out about that, you find out more and more about what energy actually is. So sometimes these how questions lead to why questions. But let me give you some how about quantum computation. Yes, you would like to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to know the role of the functional and object-oriented paradigms it's quantum computer.
Okay, good. So,
and also, why do we reject, or why does the functional paradigm reject change of state?
Okay, I don't understand that question, but maybe let me just say some stuff and then let me give it a shot. Okay. So how does quantum computation work? So the a 30-second course in quantum mechanics. The exam will be forgiving because it's only 30 seconds long. So the idea in quantum mechanics, how it works, and quantum mechanics, of course, is the branch of physics that describes how everything behaves at its most fundamental level. So, and it's kind of annoying. That's the first thing to remember, is that quantum mechanics is weird and strange. This is a technical term. It's like it's like I once heard James Brown play, and somebody in the audience said, "James, what are you going to play next?" And he said, "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's got to be funky." So quantum mechanics is funky, right? That's also a technical term. So then one of the weirdnesses of quantum mechanics, really the central weirdness, goes under the name of what's called wave-particle duality. And what this says is that stuff that we think of as waves, like light or sound, actually correspond to particles. So, for instance, light is made up of little particles called phonons, and sound is made up of little photons. Photons, I got it the other way around. And sound is made of little particles called phonons. And the way that it would manifest itself, light being made up of photons, actually our eyes are extremely sensitive photodetectors, which could detect individual particles of light. The information doesn't get passed to our brain. There's actually filtration that prevents you from seeing stuff unless you get like 5 photons, because otherwise you'd be seeing flashes of light all the time, even when it's completely and utterly dark. Actually, frogs don't have this mechanism, which might explain something about frogs' behavior. So what would happen is, if we turned off the lights in this room, well, you'd still be able to see stuff from the outside. But if we covered the windows with like black boards, eventually you would see almost nothing. And if you were a frog and able to perceive individual photons, you'd start to just see individual flashes of light, which come from individual photons hitting your retina. And and the other feature is that things that we think of as particles, such as electrons and atoms and stuff like that, have waves which are associated with them, the waves are solutions to Schrödinger's equation, which is a wave equation. Okay? So, now, this has a neat feature about it, because what do the waves actually mean? So a wave like this corresponds to a particle, let's say an electron, corresponds to an electron that's over here. This is my picture of an electron. I'm sorry, I don't know color. I think of electrons as blue, though a famous blind physicist who'd been blind from birth said, when I said this, he said, "Seth, you're wrong, electrons are yellow." Anyway, so the wave is kind of where the electron is. Where the wave is big, the electron is likely to be found. And similarly, if you have a wave over here, that means the electron is likely to be found over here. Okay? And indeed, this is you can see how this could be kind of related to something like information, because our computers store information, like a whole bunch of electrons over here is a 0, a whole bunch of electrons over here is a 1. Okay, so we could call this over here 0, and this over here 1. Electron over here is 0, electron over there is 1. All right, everybody fine so far? It doesn't seem that weird, okay? The weirdness comes because the waves, like sound or water waves, can actually add up. So if this is an okay wave, electron over here, and this is an okay wave, electron over there, then this is an okay wave, and this is a wave that is electron here and there at the same time. Not 2 electrons here and there, it is 1 electron that is here and there simultaneously. Now that's weird, right? I mean, that's strange, and it's counterintuitive, and it's counterintuitive for me, as well as for most people. It was counterintuitive for Einstein, who famously didn't believe in quantum mechanics, because it contradicted his notions of the way things were. In point of fact, this notion that things can't be in 2 places once is established in infants at around age 3 months, when they acquire the sense of object permanence. My daughters participated in these experiments when they were infants at the MIT Infant Cognition Lab, to see when they develop the stage of object permanence. And it's actually, they do it with these things that you can't speak because you're an infant. Infans means not speaking in Latin, right? So by definition, you can't speak. And what you do is you have a toy, a screen comes down, and when the screen goes up, the toy is gone. And you look at the infant, and before age 3 months, the kid's kind of like, after 3 months, they're, and anybody who has had a child knows this, because this is the basis for the secret of the game of peekaboo, right? Because the way that peekaboo works is you cover up your face, and before 3 months it just doesn't work, because you cover up your face, and before 3 months the kid is like, nah, daddy's left the room, he's gone. And it's no fun, like, and then you open up, it's like, oh, he's back. After 3 months, however, you cover up your face, and the infant is like, you know, she's looking at you. She knows you're there, right? And so what's fun about it is, like, when you go peekaboo, it's very exciting because you're confirming what she knew to be the case, which comes from her sense of object permanence. It's not that she didn't think you were there and you're surprising her by showing up. You're like delighting her by actually showing up when she knew that you were there. You can't fool your kids, right? So this really violates that very fundamental intuition about the universe. Hence, nobody, even Einstein, in fact, especially people who are very smart, who trust, like someone like Einstein would trust his intuition, would say, oh, this can't possibly happen. For me, since I don't trust my intuition because my intuition is usually wrong, I say, well, I don't know, maybe it can, all right? So, but this is the basis for quantum computing, because you have quantum bits or qubits where the bits can be not either 0 or 1, electron here or there, but 0 and 1, electron here and there simultaneously. So a quantum bit can take on 2 possible values. And if you feed in a quantum bit into a quantum computer, then it can tell the computer to do 2 different things. Like 0 can mean, add 2 plus 2, and 1 can mean add 3 plus 1. And you can get a quantum computer to be adding 2 plus 2 and adding 3 plus 1 simultaneously. Not, in 2 separate processors. The same processor is doing the same thing, 2 different things at once. It's a kind of multitasking. Nor does it stop there, because if you have 2 bits, it can do 4 things at once. 2 quantum bits, you can do 4 things at once. And 3 quantum bits, you can do 8 things at once. And 4 quantum bits, you can do 16 things at once. And if you have 300 quantum bits, so a computer that just has, a classical computer only have 300 classical bits, it would be a pretty bad computer. But a quantum computer with 300 quantum bits can do more things simultaneously than there are elementary particles in the universe. And that's where the potential power of quantum computing arises, because quantum computers can effectively do many things simultaneously. All right? Okay. Are people happy with it? That was a good time to object if you like. Like if you hate freedom, if you hate quantum mechanics, if you hate quantum freedom, now's a good time to object.
So are we saying that the universe, because the universe is like this, right? This actually happens today. The universe is a quantum universe at bottom, fundamentally. So is the universe currently computing all things simultaneously, so that it is in a number of different states all at once?
Are people happy with the end of the technical part? We can start talking about philosophical implications about this if you like. But I just wanted to point, so when we build quantum computers, which we are now pretty good at doing, a lot better than when I talked at Marymount 10 years ago, when we build quantum computers, and many, if you come to MIT, you can walk down the corridor has like 15 quantum computers sitting in it. No, they're piddling things with only like 15 quantum bits, but they still do many things at once, and they operate according to quantum mechanics. And you can have quantum bits that do 2 things at once. You can have multiple quantum bits that do many things at once. You can build these things and have them operate, even if they're not on your desktop. Actually, we could give you a desktop quantum computer if you're willing to reinforce your desk. It could even be a laptop if you're willing to reinforce your lap.
But you didn't say how works your model. This is about what is quantum mechanics for electron.
Yeah.
And of course, the question of this gentleman, because I still don't understand where is your quantum computer universe, and of course you believe that central processor unit is a god in central processor.
What?
Yes?
No, I don't believe that. No,
Okay,
no. What do you
great,
mean?
but explain us how
Where did you get that?
your model, right?
I'm sorry?
This is about electron. Explain us how you did a model of quantum computer universe or something, okay?
Okay, so
how you did this, because this is
I'm
scale.
detecting a request to do what I said I was about to do. Is that, does the other people, you wish me to talk about quantum computing and the universe? I couldn't quite tell. It sounded more like someone telling me I believed in ghosts. It's hard to say. So let's turn from this to talk about the universe as a whole. So this fact that the fact that the universe is processing information at its most fundamental level. Now, I just described this as this remarkable realization that came from me that you look at these quantum particles and they're processing information. But in fact, I'm being a bit deceptive about that, because this feature that information is at bottom part of the universe was in fact a great discovery of the 19th century. When Maxwell, Boltzmann, and Gibbs made statistical mechanics, they said, oh look, we have a certain number of possible configurations for the states of these atoms and molecules. And if we take the logarithm of that number, then this is going to be the entropy. In fact, Boltzmann's grade has the inscription S is equal to K log W on it. That is the inscription on Boltzmann's grave, which if you Google images for Boltzmann's grave, you'll see I'm not lying to you. All right. What this says is, this is Boltzmann's constant, and what this says is that the physical quantity called entropy is in fact a number of bits, because log of W is just the number of bits required to describe the underlying state of atoms and molecules. So this notion that information is intrinsic in the physical universe has been around for mathematically, at least, since the 19th century. Now, Maxwell and Boltzmann and Gibbs and these guys, they didn't know from information theory. So it wasn't really until the mid-20th century when Claude Shannon rediscovered this formula. He discovered the formula that I, information, is equal to log W. And he went to John von Neumann and said, hey, what should I call this? And he said, oh, well, you should call this, you should call this, actually, von Neumann said you shouldn't call it I, you should call it H, because that's what Boltzmann called it. So this is actually, in some sense, an old discovery, and because it's an old discovery, and since I see someone back there shaking his head, I'm going to reserve the right, and he's doing it again, I'm going to reserve the right not to actually revisit this topic. So I'm just going to ask people to accept this, and if you don't accept that, then I ask you provisionally to accept it, or to hold your fire. So, at bottom, everything in the universe consists not merely of energy, mass, elementary particles, it also consists of information, bits of information. And when things evolve dynamically in time, those bits of information get transformed and processed. And this is a scientific fact, okay? And it's actually been known for a very long time. All right, so let's see what the implications of this are. Can we understand something new about the way the universe is from the fact that it is actually processing information, effectively computing? Because if one regards computing as processing information, then the universe is computing. Does this tell us something that was not told to us by elementary particle physics? At first, I'd say, this is just a bunch of BS, okay, so it's transforming information, Boltzmann and Maxwell knew that, Shannon knew that. All right, so it's computing, but this is just, this is ridiculous, this is just an alternative explanation of something we knew all along. But I claim that this is actually not true. Because...
What is not true?
Sorry?
What is not true?
It is not, oh, sorry, I thought I just said it 3 times, but I'll say it again if you like. So it's not true that this is just an alternative explanation. The description of the universe as computing is not true that it tells us nothing more than we knew all along from elementary particle physics. It in fact explains a very important feature of the universe that is unexplained by elementary particle physics on its own. And what it explains is why the universe is complex. Now, if you happen to believe that the universe is completely simple, then you might object to this. But I personally, looking out at this audience right here, I see a diversity of opinion, amongst other things. I see a diversity of people, diversity of thought, diversity of clothes. You look out the window, you see all kinds of structures of different kinds, the fine ones of being New York. You see plants and trees, you see all kinds of structure, and very complicated structure. however you wish to define complexity. Now, something is very strange about this. Yes?
Is the universe maximally complex?
Ah, good question. Let's try to figure this out, okay? So I'm going to prevent you, I claim, and I'll now sketch why this is true. This is actually a theorem, okay? So, but I'm not allowed to talk about mathematical theorems here, so or prove mathematical theorems. So I will just sketch how this theorem works, all right? So we have, here are the features. So universe computing at a quantum mechanical level, okay? This computation that we see in the universe supports complexity. Including things like humans, animals, computers, etc. All kinds of stuff. And here's here's something that's been mystifying people for many years and for many thousands of years. Okay, and it's actually got even worse when in the 20th century. So the laws of physics are apparently simple, and the initial condition of the universe, at least at the Big Bang, one might be able to extrapolate before that, but what we really know about is that the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago, this was simple. So now, but hold it, something is really seems wrong here. You have simple laws and a simple initial condition. So what happened? Where did all this come from? And the laws of elementary particle physics are completely silent on this subject. Okay? Actually, even the laws of chemistry are silent on it, and ironically, the laws of biology, because biology is an exceptionally mechanistic and reductionist science, looks more for the mechanisms that evolved rather than for general principles of how those mechanisms might have evolved or why complexity evolves. I'm not saying, there are many well-known biologists who try to address this question, but it's hard to say why it's true.
It's much worse because universe is expanding.
Well, actually, that's lucky because I personally regard the fact the universe is expanding as being better than if it were contracting. But yes. Yeah, so this actually has to do with questions of how entropy and things are created. Yes?
So how does abstraction, how do we even think about that? The concept of abstraction, different levels of complexity.
Right. So let me actually try to give you some notion of that. So the notion of I actually don't. Do you mind if I try to address that obliquely in what I say right now? Because I really how one defines complexity is itself a complex subject and one that people don't necessarily agree about. That's why I'm trying to saying, well, whatever definition you have, there's complex stuff out there. I think most people would be willing to agree with that. Though I don't know, maybe not everybody.
Of course, cosmos is very complex. Where is your problem?
One lecture at a time, please.
Okay. Of course the complex. Actually, I would claim that this. I think I'm fair in claiming that this issue of why the universe is complex is one that has mystified people for thousands of years. If it's not complex to you, that's okay. So, but to other people for whom who are still mystified, this allow me to present this explanation. Okay. So, and I claim that it has to do with this computational ability of the universe. Because let's suppose we take. Well, let me give a description. First, a wrong description, which is actually, I thought it was due to Boltzmann, but the oldest version of it, I think, comes from Epicurus. All right. There's a great version of this in Seneca's De Naturae Deorum, on the nature of the gods, which is an argument between an Epicurean, a Stoic, and a kind of academician. So this argument says, oh, it's easy. It's just random, just like get a whole bunch of random information, which is in some sense, the maximal entropy, and this random information gives us this complexity. But the problem with that is that randomness is not complex, nor is actually maximal entropy a fun place to be. Like maximal entropy may be where the second law is taking us, but it's not a great place to be if you want to have a date on a Saturday night. or, or have, I think I'm needing the point where I'm going to have to take everybody out for a beer soon. That can't be the explanation, because in fact it's extremely unlikely that you'd get any kind of pattern from complexity, from just sheer randomness. Maybe the most famous argument about this was given, it's ascribed to Eddington, but it's not Eddington, and it's actually been ascribed to Huxley. It's not Huxley. It's actually due to sorry, I forgot the name of this French logician at the moment. It will come to me in just a second. I'll tell you. It's monkeys typing on a typewriter. That is, monkeys typing on a typewriter, if they were to type for long enough, they produce all the texts of all the greatest libraries in the world. Emile Borel, sorry, is the name. Borel made this argument in 1908, and then he pointed out in the next sentence, but of course this is ridiculous because they just produce a whole bunch of gibberish. And in fact, if you go look at the Seneca book, De Natura Deorum, this argument says that it says, some people say that if you take a bunch of golden dice with the letters of the alphabet on it, that you throw them on the ground, that it would spell out the works of Ennius, a particularly obscure Latin poet. And he says, well, this is ridiculous. I doubt it would produce even a single line, right? And indeed, you can prove that it won't. So, but let's actually take that same argument, and instead of having the monkeys type on a typewriter, they're going to type a computer into a computer. So the computer is going to interpret their random typings as being programs. So we're going to have random programs. Now, if you actually look at how structure gets injected in the universe, this is exactly how it happens. You have these little random quantum fluctuations, which give rise to chance events, purely random, but it's not everything that's random. It's just a few little things. Like, for instance, the fact that if you look at the conventional theory of the universe, the fact that that the Earth is here at this point of space, rather than 55 light years off in that direction, comes because way back in the early universe, there was a little tiny excess of matter in this region that came from a little quantum fluctuation. And that caused things to clump more and more, and there was more and more stuff. Pretty soon you had like a big swirling cloud of dust, which eventually formed the sun and the Earth in our solar system. So this random programming actually created structure. And then what you can show is that random programs based on quantum mechanics, what you can then prove as a theorem, and this is the theorem that I was alluding to before, I'm just going to allude to it. I'm certainly not going to prove it right here. But this is a well-known theorem that's easy to prove, proved by Kolmogorov and some other stuff, is that essentially all computable structures, anything that you could regard as being, computable or describable on a computer, occurs, and then they occur with high probability. So in this universe, this quantum computing universe, you can prove that anything you can imagine in your mind, because I don't want to get into this argument, but so far as we know, there's nothing that we can actually imagine or conceive of that itself could not be also produced on a computer. I mean, for one thing, our minds are such that we could actually simulate them on a computer. We don't know how to do that, but it seems to be possible to do in principle. So anything that we could imagine in any kind of mathematical structure, any kind of complex system, any kind of dynamics that is possible, is going to occur with high probability. And in point of fact, out there and somewhere out there in that direction, it almost certainly is occurring in a galaxy far, far away. So this argument now then gives us an explanation of something that has puzzled people for a very, very long time, and which became even worse and more puzzling in the 20th century. We have simple physical laws. We have a very simple initial condition for the universe, and you think simple laws, simple initial condition, everything is simple. But in fact, all you need is like a few little quantum monkeys injecting some randomish bits into your dynamical system, together with the fact that this system can compute. And our universe can compute. And once you have this, this injection of random-looking codes into a computing structure, then you don't get not just nothing, you get everything, and everything that we could imagine and all the stuff that we can see. So I think this is actually a rather useful thing, because this is the kind of thing that people have been arguing about for a long time. It doesn't require, I suppose it doesn't require supernatural intervention, though I suppose in case anybody from the Vatican is listening, it could be made compatible with supernatural intervention. I don't care. But I think it helps us, this computational paradigm for the universe helps us understand why we are what we are. And maybe this is a good place to stop, since I've already gone for like half an hour longer than I said I would.
Material gas.
Let me just monitor.
Some rulers give us, your rulers give us the planet or something. Yeah, you're talking about this.
Yeah. So
Yes.
the fact, so
Why you didn't underline this?
well, because I got tired of drawing
But
planets
you
and
know,
things like
from
that.
entropy, from bigger entropy going to smaller. Yeah.
No. It
Some
doesn't.
construction, planets, stars,
Yeah. So
in this direction. Yeah. Why you didn't say?
I thought I just did say that.
explicit
Yeah.
it?
So
You think everybody understands your model like this?
I don't know. We could take a vote. I mean, did it seem reasonably comprehensible? I mean, within the bounds of like a Monday night.
How many here understood it? Raise your hands. Okay, most people understood it. Let's go on to the next question. Someone else. This gentleman in the back.
Noam Chomsky has said that human language is the infinite use of finite means, the brain being the finite part.
Yeah.
And he said what is most curious about it is that the infinite use of finite means is found in the organic world. And
Right.
obviously we're using human language, we're very organic, we're very alive, but he says that structure is to be found in the, so can you shed, I know that you're not known, but since you're a colleague of his, maybe you could shed some light.
I refuse to shed light on Noam Chomsky. But I actually had this discussion with Noam Chomsky. So I actually know a bit of how he might respond to it, because he did. All right. So my claim for this is that indeed we see human language arising in the organic world, and that's, it's not surprising that we see it, because we're human beings, right? And so it shouldn't be too surprising that we found it there first. However, this particular ability, this fully recursive ability that underlies computer languages as well, that exists far beyond just the organic world, certainly far beyond brains. It exists in the possibility of chemical reactions, have this capacity for universal computation, as it's called, which provides us with an explanation of, or an inkling of where we should go and look to see how life might have originated in the first place. But even more importantly, this capacity for universal computation, this potential for language actually exists at the level of interactions between elementary particles. And so, it's not surprising that it was only when my colleagues and I began building quantum computers like 10 years ago or 15 years ago that we actually realized that this was true, because you're going to find human language amongst humans, not surprisingly, primer first. But this capacity, this particular ability, exists at the level of elementary particles as well.
The gentleman here. Right,
Yeah.
yes, you.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Tall young fellow.
Okay. Is there any discernible limit to this computational process?
Well, so in our universe, yeah. I mean, so once you start looking at the universe as a whole, you can actually start rating how much computation it has done and how much it can do. So because, in fact, you can just calculate using the laws of physics and how they govern computation to say how many bits are out there, out between here and the stuff we could see since the Big Bang, and how much computation has taken place, and also, moreover, how much could take place in the future. And what you find, so I wrote a couple papers about this called Computational Capacity of the Universe. You find the universe has performed 10 to the 120 operations on around 10 to the 90 bits since the Big Bang. Hey, that's a finite number. It's a big number, but it's like I can think of bigger ones. On the other hand, this is a pretty big number, and so it encompasses all of us and everything else we see out there, so it's a lot. If you look into the future, it's kind of alarming, because this thing that the Nobel Prize was given for this last year, the fact that the universe is expanding at an increasing rate, is not so good, because it means that, you know, after only a few hundreds of billions of years, we'll be left only with our galaxy and the Magellanic Clouds and everything, maybe Andromeda, and pretty much everything else will be gone. And since you need energy to compute with, and the less energy you have, the less computation you have, and then given problems like the second law of thermodynamics, which says that, basically says life sucks and then you die, then this could prove a problematic for us in the future. But luckily, I'm not going to be around when that happens.
We'll take 2 more questions. Okay, go ahead.
Because still I don't understand what is this gentleman said, paradigm of quantum computing about universe. Sir, you starting from Big Bang, and you trying show us that we can, your computing method can create like solar system something, because in what you computing specified here, you have computational universe. One chapter is a name like this. And my question is simple, because if entropy is big, and this room can be happened, then all oxygen will go to this corner and we will all die of lack of oxygen. Why it's happened in the universe? Could you explain us? That we have planned.
Let him answer.
So actually, I can see I have at least one customer for my book this evening, because your answers will be answered should you actually read the book.
Theoretical physicist.
Well, actually, I should actually now refuse to answer the question unless you buy the book. But no, look. I think I don't actually quite understand what the issue is. This notion of something is either a dynamical system that has a particular set of physical laws, can either compute or it cannot, because there is being able to compute, be a universal computer, is just a mathematical quality that something has. Our universe has that quality, and it starts off in an initial state, which corresponds to something where there's a whole bunch of memory space and it's being programmed at random. So this then explains why we see this stuff. But this is completely compatible. This is not at all incompatible with the second law of thermodynamics. I mean, you're worried about the second law of thermodynamics, which says, well, entropy is increasing, things are getting more random. Yeah, so that's fine. I mean, entropy started off low in this computational universe, and you know, all these processes, such as gas clumping together to form galaxies and stars and solar systems, that's completely compatible with this computational theory. So I guess I should say that I'm really a bit confused by your confusion.
The young lady next to that gentleman.
Yes.
Last question.
I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to be on camera.
Okay.
Yeah,
Face.
Okay, it's not pointing you.
He's
not taking you.
Yeah.
Do you believe in creation, or do you believe in the Big Bang theory, like evolution, everything just got here by the Big Bang?
Yeah, me personally, as you could probably tell from what I'm talking about, God need not enter into this. So this is not. I mean, this doesn't require any kind of supernatural intelligence to guide it. Though, I mean, having said that, this is. I would say this is. I've had this discussion with many people on the radio and call-in shows and stuff like that, because people wish to ask for religious implications. I mean, this is in some sense, you know, if you ask the religion which this is most closely resembles, is something like deism, which is, you know, that the idea that the universe is the divine, which is, and I'm not going to make any more. I'm not going to make any more comments on that. It's compatible with it. If you like to think of it as
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're really dying for one
I'll
last.
catch him later.
Go ahead. Last question, and then.
In the presence of forces, you don't have total randomness, and this is one disturbing factor in not in your model of the universe. I understand that works fine, but in terms of its progression in time. Why we have planets, why we have this, why we have that.
Right.
Because of forces.
Right. So exactly, and in fact, there are two fundamental actors in the universe. One is information, and the other is energy. And it's the interplay between these, a kind of dance between these, that makes things the way they are. So, of course, there's a very fascinating story about how gravity works to allow you to create a universe out of almost nothing. It's actually it's a salutary lesson for society, because it comes because we have positive energy and matter, and negative energy in the gravitational field. And if you're frugal and you pay back your debts, right, then you can actually keep on borrowing more and more and more and more, and you can create the whole thing out of nothing. On the other hand, if you are extravagant and you try to grab too much stuff for yourself, then you form a black hole and poof, you just go away. So there's a beautiful story in this particular dance between information and energy.
One of the nice things is that most of the things you are curious about are answered in his book, Programming the Universe, which you can purchase back there. I'm going to let him inscribe them. I want to thank Seth for driving down from MIT today. He's had 2 hip replacements, one of them recently, so give him extra credit for standing on his feet and doing all that. Thank you.